In stark contrast to Donald Trump's combative tone, Jack Smith maintained a calm demeanor and avoided any personal confrontation.
No.
Let me read to you what he posted an hour and a half ago. Deranged Jack Smith is being decimated before Congress. It was over when they discussed his past failures and unfair prosecutions. He destroyed many lives under the guise of legitimacy. Jack Smith is a deranged animal who shouldn't be allowed to practice law. If you're a Republican, his license would be taken away from him, and far worse. Hopefully the Attorney General is looking at what he's done. We have a word for this. It's called weaponization. It's called corruption. Mr. Smith, if you care to respond, I'll give you an opportunity, but I will simply say we are grateful for your service to this country. We appreciate your fidelity to the rule of law. And I would echo the comments that have been made by my Democratic colleagues to ignore the noise that you hear from so many of my colleagues who would debase themselves in this way. It is, in my view, subversive of the oaths that we took to defend the Constitution. I'm happy to give you an opportunity, Mr. Smith, if you'd like to respond.
I don't have anything to add.
To hold him accountable. In August 2023, right after your office indicted him, President Trump shared that playbook on social media for everyone to see. He wrote, "If you go after me, I'm coming for you." Trump has said that you, Mr. Smith, should be investigated and put in prison. He called you a disgrace to humanity, a radical left Marxist, a criminal. In fact, Trump has used the words deranged Jack Smith 185 times on Truth Social. How do you think that these statements have impacted you, your staff, and your investigation?
With respect to me, I think the statements are meant to intimidate me. I will not be intimidated.
He declined to respond to insults, creating a sharp contrast with Trump's political style, which is defined by personalizing every conflict and pushing legal disputes into the realm of emotion and political loyalty. This contrast led many Democratic lawmakers to emphasize that while Trump repeatedly tries to drag the justice system down to the level of personal attacks, Smith has sought to pull the discussion back to its only proper focus, the law and the evidence. Jack Smith also candidly acknowledged the possibility that he himself could become a target of prosecution due to political pressure from Trump. However, many Democratic lawmakers warned that such politically motivated retaliation is unlikely to go anywhere, not only because it lacks a solid legal basis, but also because of the weak precedents and lack of professionalism shown by prosecutors previously appointed by Trump. This exposes a core paradox in Trump's strategy. He is willing to threaten and intimidate the justice system, yet lacks the institutional capacity to turn those threats into court rulings with real legal weight. Against this backdrop, Trump's reaction after the hearing further highlighted this familiar pattern. He immediately took to Truth Social to attack Jack Smith, offering no specific legal rebuttal to the allegations and instead focusing on personal smears aimed at shifting public attention away from the question of whether he broke the law and toward questions about who is behind the investigation and what their political motives might be. At this point, the fundamental contradiction in Donald Trump's argument was laid bare before Congress and the public. Throughout his campaign and even while in office, Trump repeatedly accused the Biden administration of weaponizing the law to attack political opponents, at times comparing the situation to Stalin-era Russia. Yet at the same time, Trump has openly threatened prosecutors, called for investigations, imprisonment, and punishment of those enforcing the law against him, while his allies in Congress have sought to undermine the credibility of the investigation through allegations of bias and conspiracy theories. From that contradiction, the hearing quickly expanded into a broader picture of Donald Trump's true priorities. Many lawmakers and commentators pointed out that while Trump devotes most of his time and energy to attacking Jack Smith and threatening opponents and pursuing personal vendettas, a long list of key campaign promises to U.S. voters has been neglected. Pledges such as lowering the cost of living, protecting existing benefits, providing free IVF, releasing the full Epstein files, and ending the Russia-Ukraine war have largely disappeared from the agenda. replaced by a strategy centered on protecting Trump's personal image and consolidating his own power. As a result, the hearing quickly turned into a sharp partisan confrontation. Democratic lawmakers repeatedly stressed the gravity of the January 6th riot, describing it as a direct attack on democracy and the constitutional order, while criticizing the MAGA wing for attempting to deny or downplay the violence of the event. Meanwhile, some Republican Party lawmakers, most notably Troy Niels, sought to shift blame onto law enforcement and congressional leadership for their handling of the event. These remarks triggered angry reactions from police officers who had been assaulted and were present in the hearing room, and they clearly exposed the Trump-aligned camp's strategy of avoiding responsibility. Tensions continued to escalate when Republican Party members accused Jack Smith of spying on lawmakers and officials through the collection of call data, forcing Smith to explain in detail the use of toll records. He stressed that these records consist only of basic contact data, do not include the content of calls, involve no wiretapping, and are a standard part of criminal investigations aimed at mapping communication networks in a conspiracy to obstruct the transfer of power. This explanation was backed by Democratic lawmakers, who emphasized that there was no political pressure from President Biden or the Department of Justice influencing Smith's prosecutorial decisions. Another issue was also raised: allegations that the Republican Party was avoiding discussion of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein. So while devoting most of its time to attacking Jack Smith and defending Donald Trump, this fueled suspicions about the true motives behind their hearing strategy and further reinforced the Democratic argument that the hearing, rather than weakening the investigation, had inadvertently exposed the full range of contradictions, personal priorities, and a threat-based political strategy pursued by Donald Trump, raising broader questions about the future of the rule of law when confronted by a political force willing to challenge all limits. Republican Party lawmakers continued to pursue personal attacks, questioning Jack Smith's professional background, the cases he had worked on, and even his personal motives. Notably, however, very few questions focused directly on rebutting the core evidence in the cases involving efforts to overturn the 2020 election or the unlawful retention of classified documents. This avoidance did not escape Democratic lawmakers, who argued that it signaled a lack of sufficient legal grounds among Trump's defenders to directly confront the substance of the allegations. The atmosphere grew even more tense when the First Amendment was raised, with some Republican Party lawmakers suggesting that Trump's actions were merely political speech and therefore protected. In response, Democratic lawmakers and Jack Smith emphasized that the First Amendment cannot serve as a shield for fraud, conspiracy, or obstruction of constitutional processes if speech is used as a tool to commit a crime. They argued that conduct falls outside the protections of free expression. This was widely seen as one of the most important legal points of the hearing, and as it directly challenged the core defense strategy advanced by Trump,